Firstly, I'm delighted to introduce Sarah Noble, who is Head of Midwifery in South Warwickshire NHS Foundation Trust. She was on the National Maternity Review, so she knows about that very well, and she contributed to the publication of the Better Births Report. She advises on several national groups, including the Maternity Transformation Stakeholder Council and the Continuity of Carer subgroup, and she's a National Clinical Midwifery Lead for Workstream 3, Choice and Personalisation. She's also, and she'd probably be very modest about this, but she's also a Florence Nightingale Scholar and RCM Fellow, and I'm really delighted you're here with us tonight, Sarah.
So thank you, Sue.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you. So as you say, we just wanted to share our experience really, and the preparation and the build-up to the pandemic. So just a little bit about, us and where we work. So we're based in South Warwickshire, a sort of medium-sized unit, just over 3,200 births. And as Sue says, we've done a huge amount of work, with the team around maternity transformation. So we're in a good starting position in as much as we've got a system-wide approach to continuity of care. So all our in-area women are on a continuity of care pathway. And in March, we reported that we're achieving 39% throughout the pathway. Absolute avid believer that relational care is so important, and it really has been taken to a different level, I think, during this pandemic, when women's anxiety levels are even higher than they would ordinarily be. And the fact that, it is established here has been so beneficial, that women have had that really close relationship, with their named midwife, supported by the wider team. So we've got just under 40% of our total workforce working out in the community, and that remains the same today. They are still sort of working there, and the ethos is very much around following women wherever they birth. So good teams, and I think I'm so proud to be a midwife and so proud to lead this team, because they really are, I believe, the best of the best and committed to delivering safe and personalised care. So at the beginning, of course, part of my role as head of midwifery is that you have to plan for the worst case scenario. And in that, we sort of sat down together, social distancing, to talk about the business continuity plan and really, think in a completely different way if staffing levels were to drop. And if you're at a critical point, you've actually only got 25% of your overall workforce that are available to work. So it's thinking about, what is the critical function of maternity services? And of course, that is provide one-to-one care in labour. And through the business continuity, it's really working back from that red point, that red zone, as to which services would go at what point and why. And of course, in maternity, it's not just based on the number of midwives that you've got, but we've got so many interdependencies with other services like sonographers and paediatricians and anaesthetists and obstetricians, that all, really needs to feed into the business continuity as to what services you can deliver at any one time. But as we were working through this together, when we sort of first drafted it, there was a sort of tendency, well, we need to pull everything to centre. And then we thought, well, no, this is crazy. Actually, we've just said the critical core function is providing one-to-one care in labour. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the labour ward. That one-to-one care in labour, it's still really important as to where, the woman wants to birth, whether that's at home or in the birth centre. So right from the beginning, in the continuity plan, there was that sort of commitment to continuing to support that one-to-one care in labour as the critical core function, irrespective of where that was. And again, if anybody's interested in, more than happy to share that as a resource. So it was very much about sort of looking at how we make decisions. we've been very sort of lucky here. We haven't seen a surge. We've had the prevalence has been very low, and we've been able to maintain our services in the green so far all the way through this pandemic. But we feel, should there be a surge, we are very well prepared. We've got a very clear structured decision-making process, which is sort of MDT led, and various, written a whole paper on it in terms of, how decisions are made, who needs to be involved in any one decision and where that decision needs to go. And I think that is really important in terms of, keeping a service safe, that, if we needed to account for why a service was stopped or reduced, we would have a very clear narrative and a process to be able to explain that, and also evidence of an ongoing sort of, audit trail that we could reassess it to reinstate it as quickly as possible. The main thing that really wanted to talk about was home births. So, as we were doing the business continuity plan, our starting point at South Warwickshire for home births was very low, 0.46% last year. In 2018, we opened our Alongside Birth Centre, which approximately just over 18% of all our births go through the birth centre. I was really pleased to see early on that was an endorsement from the International Confederation of Midwives saying, actually, why not consider sort of home birth? Not only because we know the evidence from Birthplace that it's safe, and the series in the Lancet more recently about the safety of home birth, but actually during a pandemic where our high risk, more vulnerable women have been told by the government to self-isolate, why bring them in if they don't need to be brought in because there's a medical indication? If they're low risk and everything is straightforward, why not, promote the choice of home birth? So that's what we've done. We have continued to offer all three choices around place of birth, which is the norm for us. So that's home birth, the birth centre, and hospital birth. And it's really, really early days. It's only sort of been 3 weeks, really, and that's the time sort of getting the decision through all the various decision-making processes it needed to go through. We only sort of really actively promoted this through our social media last week to women, but we have seen such an incredible growth. We've had 5 home births in the last, 4 home births in the last 5 days, that's it. And have over sort of 14 women booked still for April, and numerous women, we can see it sort of increasing really quickly for May. So that for us, in terms of the size of our unit, is about 50% of all our activity will be birthing at home that would have ordinarily birthed in the MLU. One of the things which really needed to think about, in terms of, sort of a risk around this, and worked in partnership with the West Midlands Ambulance Service, was that if we were actively promoting home birth and it took off, which I felt it would, and, it has, that extra sort of increase in demand on service, perhaps from transfer from home into hospital, would impact the ambulance service. So we worked and involved them very early on in the discussions to be assured that they would be able to support those transfers, because that obviously is critical in maintaining a same home birth service. And we did some modelling together, and they were very confident that they could. But one of the things I pulled together was a standard operating procedure to actually think how we could alleviate some of the pressure for transfers. So I'll just sort of share, it's rather a busy slide, I apologise. Go back a minute just so you're not distracted by that. I suppose my background, I've had 2 home births myself. 2 of my 3 children were born at home, and set up a dedicated home birth service in Birmingham. So I'm a very experienced home birth midwife myself. And I think through my own personal experience of being at numerous home births, I often thought, when you did need to transfer in, that the vast majority of your transfers in were for non-emergency or life-critical reasons. They were often because labour had slowed down, or you wanted to offer continual monitoring, or there was sort of thick meconium. Very few, probably 2 to 3% of all emergencies were your really, moments where, life critical that you needed to get in quickly. And, at the numerous home births I've been, routinely 2 ambulances are sent, even though that you've only requested 1 because the mother is hemorrhaging, baby's actually been born and okay. So I was speaking to West Midlands Ambulance Service, and whilst this is our local SOP, we sort of put together, I should have done it in red, amber, green, but your level 1 are your life critical emergencies, which of course you would call an ambulance for, and your level 2. But if you look at the level 3, ordinarily, culturally, we would call an ambulance, and I've certainly called an ambulance before for level 3 emergencies. But actually, for these, women could use, I'm not expecting women to drive themselves in, but, a partner to drive, a woman, or a family member to drive a woman into hospital, because you've got time. And I think that's the assessment, that's the risk assessment that you've got to take, is, whether you've got the time. Obviously, the midwife would still phone ahead, and you would still have those normal communications with your labour ward lead to relay why you're transferring somebody in. So that's what we sort of put together and agreed with the view, and it's so early days, but we will sort of monitor it, but it should reduce, some pressure on the ambulance service, and actually be a much nicer experience for women, less frightening, less stressful, and quicker, when you're just going in your own car and meet the midwife at the hospital. So the other things that we've done, I think one of the critical things, in particularly in a pandemic, but anyway, are really good communications. And our first level of communication, which we have embedded, of course, is that name midwife. And we've said to all of our midwives to really up their communications. So the midwives are more regularly phoning women, just doing those check-ins, in addition to their antenatal checks, and in addition to their routine postnatal visits. There are more sort of check-ins with women. I think it was, I can't remember, about 2 weeks ago, the weeks are blurring now, we launched our Facebook page, particularly for the pandemic, and we've already got over 1,600 followers. And we've had a huge amount of positive feedback because things are changing on a daily basis, how you access the unit, how you're going to be greeted in terms of what PPE you can expect midwives to be wearing, what can you expect for your appointments, are they going to be virtual, are they going to be face-to-face? So this has been a really good medium for us to post daily sort of updates out to women. And if anybody wants to have a look at the sort of things, that's the link there. And it's open. We've opened it to mothers and family members. One of the other, we were doing a pilot before the pandemic started with the University of Salford, Face Mums. So we've got 6 pilot groups of cohorts of 20 women that have 2 midwives within their group. So the midwives and the women have never met face to face, but it's that virtual support through social media. Thank you. That's just my timing, which has been fantastic. And it's another layer on a very personal level, because often when I'm sort of posting, it's at the end of the day, sort of at 9, 10 o'clock at night, but it's a much more personal conversation that you're having. We've worked very closely with Maternity Voice partnerships, and any sort of decisions we've made, we have, involved them as well. I've just got some resources here. So this is quite a long leaflet that we've got. I think it's about 30 pages. It's just the front 2 pages of it. But it goes through the whole pregnancy and birth pathway for women. And this has been really useful, again, for sort of our primary care partners. So they know, what to expect and can inform women. You can go back and look at these, but I think, like Abigail was saying earlier, my inbox has been flooded with some really positive comments. It's really been noticeable over the last 3 weeks, which has been wonderful, because quite often, sometimes as head of midwifery, you only hear the not so positive stories. So it's been a real change. So I hope that continues. One of the things I think that made us a success is, as well as really looking after our women, we've got to really look after our staff. And that's something that we, really invest in, because, people are our beating heart. And if we don't get that right, we won't get it right for families either. And there's sort of a whole list of things, that we are doing to support and promote staff well-being.
Thanks for watching this video from the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. For more expert opinion and analysis, hit the button below to subscribe.